Hi, you guys. All right, so we're going to do chapter 14, land. This is part of unit 5, human land use. So you should be on your 5th tab in your notebook. I missed you guys. I've got my 3 colors. Hopefully you do too, right? We're going to change our 3 different colors. However you do it, I don't care. But keep up your good habits. What we're going to do is we're going to do 1 chapter a week. Okay, we're going to definitely slow down the pace. We're waiting to find out a little bit more detail. It should be coming pretty soon in the next couple of days. I'm putting this up, so we're going to do 1 chapter a week, and that way, until we hear anything different, that's my pace for right now. Okay? So, what are the main purposes of land uses for humans? When we think about land, what do we use land for? Right? The number one thing is to grow what? Food, right? So our first use is farming. By the way, if there's starting to be a certain color that you guys are noticing that's hard to see in the videos, let me know on the Google Classroom at the bottom of the post, and then I'll make sure to stop using those colors, okay? So we got farming, mining, building. Any other ideas? We've got cities, obviously, building cities, and roads, recreation. So all that put together, those are some of the main uses, all right? So we've got land cover. What's a particular piece of land? What's on it, all right? What are we using for? So 6 primary land use categories. You've got your range land for grazing, forest land, that's your wood, your wildlife, other resources. You've got your crop land, obviously where we're growing crop, okay? Plants for food and fiber. Okay, not just eating fiber, but also resources. Think of your cotton for your couches, for your bedding. You get the gist. Urban land, right? So one distinction I want to make sure you're clear with is urban land versus rural. Urban land covered mainly with what? Buildings and roads. Rural land, that's going to contain few people and very, very large open areas, open space, okay? We've got parks and preserves, recreation, preserving ecosystems, wetlands. Remember what wetlands mainly, why they're so important as an ecosystem, right? They're super, super important because they help what with flooding? Soak up excess water, hopefully was your answer. Wetlands, mountains, deserts, others, right? They're very difficult to what? To use, right? Because we definitely don't want to use up our wetlands by putting a bunch of cement into it, which unfortunately we have been doing, which is causing an increase in flooding. Mountains, you've got peaks, a little hard to flatten them out. Deserts, you have a hard time bringing a lot of water to it. So all these types of areas are going to be very difficult to use. And then of course urban, that's your houses, your businesses, your industry, roads. All right, we're going to flip to the back of this. I'm having a little bit of internet issues, so we're using the paper, old school, but you know you can look on the PowerPoint to see the pictures in color. All right, if you're good with this, I'm going to erase, and you know you've got the answers to all this on the paper already on Google Classroom. And I'm erasing now. So, land uses worldwide, right? Forest land, that's about 1/3. Rangeland and pastures, 27%. Cropland, 18%. This is for the United States, right? Parks and preserves, urban, 3%. Others, 8%. So 14% is what we've actually set aside for parks and preserves. That's within the United States. Now, let's look at worldwide. Africa, so urban. Remember the difference between urban and rural? We just did that. Urban, that's going to be your cities, right? Rural's the country. So think Jacksonville, Yulee, Callahan, Hilliard, right? That's what we're talking about. Well, what used to be Yulee, right? Yulee's becoming much more urbanized, but still rural, okay? So Africa, obviously, less rural, less urban, than rural. That's not unexpected. Asia, the urban starting to catch up to the rural. Europe, much more urban than rural. South America, Might be surprised by that. South America actually has a lot of urban compared to the rural. That's the rainforest that's getting diminished, okay? North America, much more urban than rural. That's a concern because that rural is what's providing the food from the crops, right? And then Oceania is your Indonesia, your Australia, New Zealand. That's what that is, okay? And then again, much more urban than rural. That might surprise you too. You kind of think of Crocodile Dundee. And if you haven't seen Crocodile Dundee, it's a good movie to watch from the 80s. But actually much more urbanized than rural. All right? Okay, until the 1850s, most people lived in very rural areas. Changing to green. You know you don't have to use the same colors as me, just make sure you change your colors. All right, that changed with what revolution? Industrial Revolution, right? That's when all of the major pollution started occurring, right? People moved into the cities for jobs. The result, urban areas grew and spread over rural land. Over more land. Sorry. Whether people live in cities or countries, they depend on resources produced in these rural areas, right? We need soil, we need water, we need wood, we need oxygen. Remember, wood is your #1 resource in our more developing countries, right? Ecosystem resources. The resources produced by natural and artificial ecosystems. You're going to have the purification of air and water. You're going to have the preservation of soil. You've got your regulation of climate. And then the cycling of nutrients. The nice cycling of nutrients. You guys remember we talked about the water cycle, the nitrogen cycle, you've got your phosphorus cycle, and you've got your carbon cycle, right? That's what we're talking about there. Now, regulation of climate. If you've ever been in the city, like New York, it gets really, really, really hot. Why? Why do you think? You've got a lot less what there? You're gonna have a lot less trees, right? So if you've got less trees, you're gonna have a lot more buildings. So all of that ends up making the whole area warmer, believe it or not. So what a lot of cities are starting to do is they're actually creating these greenhouses, these gardens on the top of their buildings. And what they've noticed is by doing that, it's actually cooling not only the building, but the entire city itself. So it's been a huge help, and we're actually going to talk about that on the back of this sheet in just a second. The area of rural land needed to support one person depends on many factors, looking at climate, standard of living, and how efficient resources are used. The average U.S. citizen uses 12 hectares, which is about 12 rugby fields, of land in a lifetime, okay? So it's quite a bit of land. And that's to have enough food, to have enough plants for clean air, to have enough clean water, all of that put together, all right? So, kids use that pretty fast. And yes, I know, I need to change my color. Changing it. All right. Don't forget, 3 colors, 3 questions. Put your 3 questions right there, right, you guys? Slide that up. Urban land use. Urban areas, the area with more than 2,500 people and a governing body. Urban areas that have grown slowly have become pleasant places to live. Okay. Urban areas that have grown slowly. Okay, Is that something that we've experienced in our area? Have we had a slow growth or we have fast growth? That's something we've already discussed. We've had a bit of a fast growth, especially in the Yulee area, right? So what's been some of the issues with that? Remember we talked? And hopefully you're saying that, unfortunately, some of the issues has been traffic, our infrastructure, right, has been taking a hit. So our roads, our schools, our police and fire departments, right? They're all having a hard time keeping up with the fast growth. But urban areas that grow slowly, they have a chance to catch up with that fast growth. So, but sometimes areas so popular like Yulee that grows too fast. So it's a good problem in a way, bad problem in another. Let me show you this. So this is what I was telling you about. Will be a lot better on the website. So comparison of temperature in rooms with and without green roofs. Yeah, I'm so sorry. It's so much better than the actual picture. But they'll actually show you the decrease in temperature by having, what they're doing basically is like, so they're growing, they'll put trees up there, they'll put gardens. Some of them will actually grow potatoes, tomatoes, strawberries, berries, you name it. They'll grow it. And they'll just have these green tops on top of their buildings. More and more cities are doing this. It's really cool. Worldwide, by the way. It's not just in the US. It's really neat. And they've noticed that it's actually helping not only the people in the building because they have food, but the electric bill for everybody in the whole building has actually decreased significantly. So it's really neat. So it helps the city. You got clean air. It helps the building because it's cooler in the building. So it helps the people, the residents in the building because electric bill goes down. And they don't have any food. It's a win-win-win for everybody. So it's really cool. In case you missed our bells, they're still going on. Roads and transportation built to handle the growth. The traffic flows well. Something we haven't seen in a little while. Buildings, roads, parking lots are mixed with green spaces and recreational areas, provide ecosystem services. This is great. All right, this sounds really, really, really nice. All right, now, urban area that grows rapidly is going to have a fast growing population that's going to overwhelm the infrastructure. It's going to lead to traffic. Yeah, check. Substandard housing, polluted air, water becomes urban crisis. Global urban growth problem, the need of the population becomes greater and the resources available. Then you've got urban sprawl. This is what we are experiencing in Yulee. Urban sprawl, right? Rapid expansion of the city into the surrounding countryside. So it's going from Jacksonville into Yulee. Suburbs, which can land previously used previously used for food production and open spaces. I would definitely know about urban sprawl. Greater urban sprawl. Erasing, moving it up. Any questions you guys have about the video, please make sure you guys post them, and I will gladly answer them. Now I want to talk to you for a second about marginal land. That's land that's really not great for building. It's on the outskirts, and it's in a way helpful because you're going to be able to keep that land available for crops. And we've got heat islands, so that's what's something that's going to occur. For example, in cities, that's what we were talking about, where sorry guys, this is a little different, not having you guys interacting with me, so it's a little different. Heat island, increased temperature in the city, so we talked about. The city generates and traps the heat because of the buildings. It can affect the local weather patterns, so you can have completely different temperatures in the city than you can in the suburbs. That's why Jacksonville can be a lot warmer than us when we're only 20 minutes away. Urban sprawl creates problems. It covers the land that was once used for land production, for food production. It'll destroy your ecosystems. And it causes erosion by developing marginal lands. Remember, you need those root systems from those plants to keep all that land in place. If we don't have those root systems in place from the trees, from the plants, erosion is going to occur. We're going to have a problem. All right, so one way to try and prevent all these negatives from occurring is by doing urban planning. So, land use planning. If you guys got your packets before spring break, you'll see that right after chapter 14 notes, there's a land use planning activity. I'll put a different message about that on Google Classroom, so don't worry about that for right now. I want this to be fun, okay? I want this to be fun, something to get our minds off of everything, so don't stress about that one at all. I know it says group stuff, but just don't worry about that for right now. Determining in advance how land will be used. So, you know, where are you going to allow a certain amount of houses in the area? What kind of buildings? What kind of factories? Are you going to protect certain plots of lands, etc.? So we talked about the area between 200, State Road 200, A1A, Duval County line, 95, and 17. That whole area right there is supposed to get something like 3,000 homes, 2 elementary schools, a middle school, and a high school. That all had to be approved through the land use planning process, right? County commissioners had to approve that, had to go through a whole thing, had to be presented to the people who lived in the area. They had a big open house at Nassau County School Board, FSCJ's Nassau campus. Actually got to go, and it was really cool. You got to see everything. They have to present, let the public know what's going on. So you have to listen for any of those presentations. Same with wildlife. Wildlife has to inform you. There's a permanent building that they have open. You can go and find out. They'll tell you what buildings are coming in, what businesses are coming in. So let you know and let people who live here know what's going on. So we're trying to determine the best location for certain things. I'm changing markers. Go to orange. Oh, I missed that sound. Never thought I would. All right, developers, environmentalists, citizens, business people, and public officials get together. Anybody has a say-so into the land use planning. Everybody has a say-so what's going on. All right? They want to hear from everybody, because the more people they hear from, the better of a community you're going to end up having. Geographic Information System, GIS. It's a computerized system. Ooh, that's a good color. Computerized system for storing, manipulating, and viewing geographic data. It's a tool to use to help with planning of the land use planning. All right? I'm going to erase. And slide this up. All right. 2 pages down, guys. 1 more to go. Almost 2 pages down. The goals of good city planning is to develop efficient, clean, mass transit. All right? In certain areas, that's more doable than others, right? So, but in a perfect situation, that's what we have. Not always doable depending on where we live, right? But that would be a perfect situation. You okay? I'm going to erase. All right. Hold off on this for a second. Keep going here. Now, one of the things that they want to make sure to do is to incorporate open spaces. Right? Land set aside for recreation and scenery, because start noticing when you are able to drive around, and start looking at the parking lots. And you'll start to notice that some of the parking lots are going to have just straight parking spots, no trees, no gardens, no landscaping whatsoever. And then you're going to start noticing some of the other parking lots that have a little bit of some trees, some flowers, some landscape. And you'll notice that there's some differences. And then start paying attention to subdivisions that are built with that same setup. Some with more landscaping than others. And then even, as we are eventually allowed to drive around some more, areas are going to be like this. You'll notice some subdivisions that have more of a park setup. That's one of the things that Wildlight's trying to do, is have more parks spread out. Nocatee has that. That's the idea. That's where they're going for, is to make sure to have more of those recreation spaces. Having parks, little playgrounds, right? That idea. The more we have that, the idea is better because it provides important ecological services and environmental benefits to urban areas. Support trees and plants that are going to absorb our what, you guys? Will they suck up? CO2, right? Or carbon dioxide. We're trying to produce oxygen, filter pollutants to help cool the city. All right, so land management and conservation. Rural land is important because the ecological services it provides, right? Without rural land, we can't have food. You need to protect farmland to increase crop production. So farmland, yes, I'm changing color. I get the groove, y'all know that, and then I forget. But still, 3 colors, 3 questions. 3 colors, 3 questions, right? Farmland used to grow crops and fruit. They're very much in danger. They're being paved over or developed. Protection, U.S. Farmland Protection Program. So go ahead and make sure that there's a certain percentage of farmland that is protected that we cannot develop. Then we have range lands. Land with plants that are not used for farming or timber production. This is really to make sure that erosion is not a problem, because that right there is what was one of the key parts to the Dust Bowl. We had so many plants that got pulled out that the root system wasn't there to keep the soil in place. Then you had a drought. Then you had over farming that caused the land to not be able to produce enough soil because all the nutrients were taken out, and it was the perfect storm, excuse the pun, for the Dust Bowl. Results in changes in the plant community and erosion. Solution: grazing fewer animals, leaving parts untouched so it can recover, and getting rid of invasive plants, planting more native plants. Problems with this: overgrazing, right? More animals than the land can support. That's a huge problem. I'm changing the purple. The purple's going on me. All right.
You. Oh, God.
Hey, Mr. Williams. Mr. Williams says hi, you kiddos.
You're
fine. Yeah. All right. So I'm going to erase and move this up.